So I'm here with Barbara Lee, my witch mummy, actually, from many, many years ago. Barbara found me as a teenager and took me into her covenstead.
Did you find me or did I find you?
We found each other.
Yeah,
that's grand. So what I would like to do today is have Barbara go through the idea of traditional Wicca and the practice of traditional Wicca in Ireland, so a little bit about the history, your experience with it, how you got into it, and what it is basically, because when we talk about Wicca, and my experience of Wicca seems to be very different than a lot of my US folks, my US audience, friends, all the rest of it would have maybe very different experiences of what Wicca is or is not, right? So yeah, that's what I would like to do. So
let's start at the beginning. And the beginning was when I got involved with Wicca. When I was only slightly older than you were when you met me, I was when I met the Farrers. And Janet Stewart Farrer, who moved to Ireland in 1977 and accidentally met my parents in 1979. And through my parents, I met them. So that's like, I don't know.
39 years ago.
1979 is actually 39 years ago. Could have been 78. 40-ish. Yeah, but it's around that anyway. It's a while ago anyway. And things in Wicca were very different then than they are now. One of the interesting things, just as an aside, about Wicca is it is something that is evolving, which is a good thing, not a bad thing. Absolutely. It is a good thing.
Absolutely.
Evolution is good. I would hate to think that I was the same person today as I was when I was 19 or 20. In fact, the thought actually horrifies me that, one could be go through one's entire life without learning, growing, evolving, and understanding new things and old things in new lights. So anyway, met the Farrers. My mum was probably more interested in Wicca at that stage than I was, but I thought the whole thing was fascinating, and there was a chord that got struck within me, and I started to read as much as was available at the time, which was not as much as is available now. There is much, much more. And a lot of it was difficult reading because it was written for an erudite audience as opposed to a normal, ordinary, educated. So had to learn a lot of new things along the way and stifle a lot of boredom. So anyway, I spent probably about a year, maybe slightly more, reading about it. And the more I read about it, the more appealing the whole concept of there being more than one great big patriarchal deity ruling over us all became.
So was that your first point of fascination?
That was my first. Yeah. My second, and probably now more important to me, was that being part of the land and being part of nature and the whole cycle of the land and nature and learning to understand it better. And I think that's probably a very big difference between European Wicca and North American Wicca. I think there is a big difference there in that our relationship with our locality is as important as our relationship with the praxis. And the praxis kind of evolves into something else as a result.
And obviously there are exceptions, so don't come at us in the comments, okay? But we are generalising here.
We are very much generalising. But, for as many different people who practice Wicca, there are probably as many different points of view as to what Wicca is. And that's a good thing too.
Yeah.
You know, nobody, it is first and foremost. The third thing, you know, let's go back to what I was saying. The third thing about it was that it was very much a self-driven praxis. And that's very important, that it wasn't about the rest of the world and me. It was about me and the rest of the world. You know, there is a big difference in those 2 points of view. So it actually was about me putting me in the place where I felt I fit and not being ashamed about that.
You finding your path, your specific path.
And
not joining in with others walking.
It's the individual. It is a path of the individual. Even though we meet in covens, it is a path of the individual. And that is something that a lot of people don't understand. It's one of the reasons probably why Wicca within Ireland is not as widespread as solitary witchcraft or other forms of witchcraft. Because people who like to be in congregations don't fit in Wicca, and people who don't like to be in congregations think of Wicca as being a congregation. So that it fits a very specific group of people. And I think that's actually quite important to realise that, you know, not every practice of magic or spirituality is meant for every person, you know. So we each have our individual ways of approaching and understanding, and it's why for many as well, I think it's a starting point for the rest of their journey. And
for me.
And I hope it's a very good starting point.
It has been. It very much has been for me. And there is a kind of almost a derogatory attitude to it. You know, when people hear that you started in Wicca, like when people hear that I started in Wicca, and they're like, "Oh, I thought you were native pagan and all this," and I'm like, "Well, actually, I am, because I'm from Ireland, so obviously I'm native pagan." But they don't understand that. You know, they don't understand the structure and the framework, the ritual praxis that goes with that, the learning environment, the community, you know, the family situation in a good coven. That gives you such a foundation, such a really a quality foundation. Now I know that we maybe had a kind of an idealistic situation, and that not all Wiccan covens are created equal. You know, not all Irish Wiccan covens are created equal. So there's definitely that. We were, I believe, very fortunate and very blessed in the groups that we have worked together in. But yeah, I think that's really important to kind of to bring out that it's an excellent training ground. It's an excellent starting point. But obviously for you, it's so much more than that as well.
Well, I think just to go back to the training ground, I think what ideally for me, what Wicca does to anybody that I have trained is it gives them the environment in which they learn to learn. So it's not about me going, I'm going to teach you this. It's about you going, I'm going to learn this. Are there rules? Of course there's rules. There's got to be rules in everything. It's a system. And one of the beauties for me about Wicca is that foundation, as you say. It's that magical foundation where you have a set of not quite immutable, because everything can change, not quite immutable rules, but you've got a structure whereby you can create something so much greater than the sum of its parts. And that's the whole idea to me of magical practice, as well as every other part of it, is the idea to me of magical practice is, once you know the rules, once you know how the rules work, once you can function properly within the rules, then you can function outside them.
Yeah, then you get to break them. And
exactly, and figure out how. And, you know, it's nearly 40 years. And I always said, you know, the day I stop learning is the day that it no longer works for me.
Yeah.
So far, the day hasn't happened that I've stopped learning. A lot has changed. Huge amounts have changed for me personally. You know, I've gone through the whole marrying the wrong person, having 2 beautiful children with the wrong person, losing one of those beautiful children, getting rid of the wrong person, still having a beautiful son. So, you know, and being with the right person. So, you know, that's all good.
Yeah.
All of that is good. All of those things taught me something. Sometimes they were hard lessons to learn. Sometimes they were very easy lessons to learn. But what I did learn, most of all the lessons that I've learned, is to appreciate what you have, because, you know, it's going to change. Everything is going to change. And the one constant in all of those things that have changed in my life has actually been Wicca. You know, and my practice of it, and my community support from it. And that's been hugely important. It does create a community. And to my joy, as I've gotten older, that community has expanded to be Europe-wide now. You know, rather than we were just a little coven that sat in Ireland and did our own thing. Now, because of the internet and because of all of the amazing people that are out there, it's something so much bigger. And it's something that continues to teach me. And, you know, I have knowledge that people learn from, and they have knowledge that I learn from. And it is always this melding together, this coming together of understanding and doing exciting new things. And it's exciting. You know, it's really exciting. What I do is exciting. I've never done a ritual that I've gone, oh, that was a bit shit. Never.
No.
You know, I've always come out of ritual going, wow, that was awesome. You know, that was amazing. You guys are amazing. What we do together is amazing. How we grow together is amazing. So I think that's a huge part of it. The other thing that is very important, and it's not just here, it's in the UK, it's in mainland Europe, is how we interact with the physical landscape around us.
Yeah.
And I think that is really, really important. And one of the things I think that's quite interesting is that I was at a big kind of thing, a Wiccan-y thing, many years ago, which was held here. And we're talking to various people there, and there were people from all over Europe, from covens all over Europe, and it was a wonderful space to be in. But one of the things that somebody said to me was so interesting, and that was the difference between Ireland and everywhere else. Europe, anywhere they've been. And they said, the difference is that in Ireland, it's here. Everywhere else you have to dig for it.
Yeah.
In Ireland, it is in your face. You can't ignore it.
Yeah.
You have to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
You have to understand that you can't take something that is in a textbook and create that something to work here, because it won't.
Yeah.
So you have to develop, you have to learn to understand the land, the landscape, and that which populates that landscape. So I think of all the things that Ireland teaches you, that's what Ireland teaches you the most.
Yeah, and that is definitely cross-tradition. No matter what way you're working, you have to work that way.
Yeah, you have to. You actually don't have choice. So, and there are times when you have to go, well, actually, the way I would normally do things is not the way that I'm going to do it in this space. Yeah. So, for example, we had, I can't even remember where the ritual was, but it was within a sacred place. And the first thing that had to be left aside was weapons.
Okay.
No weapons allowed.
Mm.
No weapons.
Mm.
You know, it was very, and the only reason we knew this was because we listened to what the space told us to do.
Yeah.
So it was, you know, leave. We don't want your fancy stuff. We don't want all of that. We just want you. So you've got to do it without all your fancy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You've just got to do it as you.
No bother.
And again, no, I mean, any good witch can do no bother.
Yeah.
You know, it's because, you know, your tools are not the be all and end all of your practice.
Yeah.
They're handy to have, and it's nice to have shiny things.
Yeah.
I like shiny things.
They help focus things, and but they are tools. That's
But yeah, exactly.
They're not
so
the power.
If you can't work without them, then you shouldn't be working with them.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, is you know, my golden rule. I guess if I have a golden rule, that's my golden one. Is you know, if you can't do it without, then don't be bothering.
Yeah.
Because you haven't got what it needs. You know, and it takes time to practice that, and you know, it takes time to understand that. I mean, I have very weird sort of set of self-discipline. I'm not one of these people that get up and greet the dawn and go, "Hey Dawn, how are you?" Well, I might in the winter. You know, Dawn's at quarter past 9 I can cope with, but you know, not at midsummer. No way. And anyway, my theory is that sunset was much more important to our ancestors than sunrise was at midsummer sunrise. They more sense and all. But yeah, you know, it is listening to space. You know, it's if you don't listen, wherever you are, if you don't listen, you're not going to get very far magically anyway. And I don't mean listening with your ears. You listen with everything. You listen with your body.
Yeah.
And it's always a pretty good golden rule.
Yeah. And that goes for, you know, that's, I keep banging on about my, you know, you have to have a daily practice. You have to have space in your day to listen, to be available to whatever you're in relationship, whether that's land or spirits or beings or gods or the she or whoever. You have to be available. So you can't be just kind of focusing on your own things. You know, you have to make that space to be available.
And there's lots of ways of doing it.
Absolutely.
Because I'm not a meditator. I've never been one to sit. I've never been one to go, oh, you know, you're all so wonderful. I'm just not that kind of person.
Well, there is a lot more to meditation than that.
Yeah,
but I get what you're saying.
But you know, no, I mean, how I meditate, how I get in touch, and sometimes when I don't, I really feel it. Is I walk.
You walk. I was going to say, like you're a moving meditation.
I am a moving meditation person. I can't sit still. I'm Sagittarian. You know, have you ever seen a still fire? You know, come on. Just doesn't happen.
Yeah. And you do it with cooking as well.
I do it with cooking, yeah. And sewing, any kind of creative art, any kind of meditative art, I do it, you know, I like making these yokis as well. They're really cool. Anything that involves a repetitive action where my focus can go into the other spaces.
And your garden.
Gardening big. Well, my gardening and actually, funny enough, even cleaning house. You know, if I have something that I want to achieve magically, I will very often use the garden and the house to work to achieve this. And when I run out of weeds, it's terrible. You know,
eyeing up your neighbour's weeds.
Absolutely. But you know, hoovering even or vacuuming, to those who don't know what hoovering is one of those things that you can really get behind. And you've got the action of the hoover going, and you've got the stuff in your head going, and it all kind of pulls it together. So, you know, I think as a race, we're probably meant to do things on the move. You know, we're not Eastern sort of oriented in that sit still and do nothing and the world will come to you. No, be active, do stuff, and the world will talk to you. I do my best ritual writing when I'm walking. I was writing big group ritual for something last year, and I was out walking the dog and I was going, right, how am I going to do this? And, you know, there were about, I suppose, 90 people involved in the ritual, so I had to have a ritual which involved the movement and participation of 90 people. I didn't want people to be on the outside doing nothing. So I needed movement, I needed to have it. And so I'd go for a walk and I'd come home and I'd go to the other half and go, right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this, we're going to do this. And he'd go, write it down. I said, I can't write it down yet. What do you mean you can't? I said, it's not finished. I'll write it down when I'm finished. But I'm just giving you the idea to hold while I go and think about the rest. And then go for another walk and go, right, and then this is going to happen. And then we're going to do this. And then we're going to do the other thing. And so I'd say it took me about 2 weeks of walking, you know, every morning and evening to kind of put the whole thing together. And I do that with tarot as well, with the work I'm doing with the tarot. I'd be walking and I'd be sort of thinking, meditating on a particular card or on a particular cycle of cards. And I go, wow, never thought of them in that way before. That's really interesting. And then I'd have to go home and look at it and go, yeah, I'm right. Yeah, I like that.
It works.
So it's particularly when I'm walking, because nothing else is going on. Yeah. You know, and it's the part, I'd never take my phone with me unless I'm actually walking to take photographs. Yeah. But otherwise I much to the annoyance of everybody who knows me, I won't take my phone with me when I go for a walk, because I consider that to be intrusive into that space. Yeah. And it's really important for me not to have that intrusion. Or if I do take it, it goes on silent. Yeah. So I don't hear it. Again, much to the annoyance of my mother, who's always ringing me when I'm going for a walk. Mom, I'm just going out the door now. Yeah.
So you started working with Janet and Stuart Farr in Swords?
In Swords, in
County Dublin.
Yes, I was initiated in... I was just before my 21st birthday. I think. It was before my 20th birthday. I think it was just before my 21st. So it must have been 1980. Okay. No. I would have been 21. So it was just before my 21st birthday. So, and they did things a lot different back then. A lot different. For starters, all the members of the coven were very young. Very young. You know, I was 20 and I wasn't the youngest. Right. So we would all go out to them every weekend. Okay. Every single weekend we would arrive at around lunchtime on Saturday.
Some commitment.
And we would go home around lunchtime on Sunday. Right. And the time in between was spent talking and learning about magic. And sometimes we did things in the middle of the week as well, you know. And it was great because we had no commitments, we were young. It was easy to do it that way. But it also had the downside in that it kind of isolated us a little bit. I don't think it was, I would not have said even then that it was healthy.
But there wasn't the same community to be isolated
there wasn't,
from
yeah,
either. You know,
there was no community. This was our community. This was our magical community. There was nobody else. And because we were always doing things, it moved very much more quickly. To give you an idea, you know how
horrify me, isn't it?
you know how I work. Yeah. So to give you an idea, I attended my first ritual on September the 6th, I think, 1980. I was initiated at the beginning of November 1980. 2 months later. Wow. I took my first ritual before Yule 1980.
What?
I had my second degree. Actually, it was the only degree that was a year and a day later. Right. But precisely nearly a year and a day later, I was second degree. 8 weeks after that, I was third degree. And less than a year after that, we hived. Wow. And formed our own coven. So
Hothoused.
from 20 to 22. We were 23. I was just 23 when we hived. Because it was a Yule kind of, we unofficially hived at Yule and we officially hived in February of 1983. February 1983. So when we hived, we actually sat down and looked at ourselves, and for very feckless.
Sorry, just for anybody who's not familiar, hived means going off and starting your own coffin, just in case. Terminology.
So we were young and we were feckless, but we had a bit of sense, and there were quite a few of us. There were 7 of us altogether.
Okay.
So there was 2 girls and 5 boys, which I know in this world, crazy world that it is, very unusual for to have a much more heavily male-based coven. But that's just the way it happened. Not so much these days. So the first couple of years, we hadn't a fucking clue what we were doing. Well, we did. We knew what we were doing, but we didn't really. So, yeah, we managed to make some pretty big mistakes. But one of the things that we did do was we kind of set down a few rules. First rule was always sober. You know, so, I mean, we could get as drunk as we liked and often did after, but before we started anything magical, we would be sober. So we would go into that circle, and I mean on every level.
Yeah.
You know, I'm talking not just alcohol, I'm talking, what are they called? Recreational drugs.
So what are kids doing these days?
I don't know. Anyway, so always sober. That was the first, that was our big thing, because it wasn't necessarily something that we came from. And it was...
Which seems bizarre, because it was always the rule, obviously, when I was working with
kids.
So.
Yeah. But, and there are still a lot of covens who will quite happily, you know, have a few drinks beforehand and not get out of there.
Yeah.
But I actually still have my absolute golden rule is, particularly if I'm taking ritual, you know, maybe if I'm participating and, you know, there are, you know, a glass of wine or whatever, I would have that. But if I'm taking a ritual, I would not drink. End of. I need to be present, and I need to be able to differentiate between what is alcohol happening and what is other stuff happening. Because I'm in much more control of the other stuff happening if I don't have alcohol. Whereas if I do have alcohol, I'm not in control of the other stuff happening, and then all sorts of bad things can happen. So,
and obviously you're being responsible for everybody's...
And I am also responsible for everybody in that circle. So it is about being sober. The second, I suppose, thing that we did was we stopped meeting every week. You know, we were growing up. We weren't in college anymore. We had jobs. We had people traveling from around the country, because half my coven actually came from about 60, 70 miles away. So they all had to come up to Dublin to be with us. And the other thing that we wanted to do was we needed to play. We needed to actually, and I mean play in terms of expanding what we were doing and what we knew, and we needed to experiment, and we needed to open ourselves up to lots of other ways of doing things and working, and to actually just grow as a coven. So the first couple of years working together was what we did. And then we thought, you know, we really should think about taking in somebody else. Like, we're all working together, and, you know, we all found where we were going, but so we were going, well, how do you get other people to join a coven
before the internet?
Before the internet, and you can't proselytise. So what we did was, there was a contact magazine called In Dublin,
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you remember.
I do.
So we put an ad in Dublin, and I think the ad read, South Dublin based coven is open to the idea of receiving new members. I think that's how we put it.
Hi, we're here.
Yeah.
We maybe would be interested if
Yeah. So, and then we had a post office box, and you know, we said, please send your details. And in actual fact, I think we got about 30 letters.
Wow.
And out of those, you know, most of them were nutballs.
Yeah. I mean, serious, like, oh my god, don't let them anywhere near us. Whose idea was the P.O. box?
Yeah.
Buy that person a present.
So anyway, in the end, we took one person.
Yeah.
But we'd also, you know, other people had come our way through friends, and,
Yeah.
you know, this is what I'm interested in. Because, you know, one of the things that is, I think, really interesting about any group is that we do congregate together. We find each other without having to put out, you know, feelers and whatever. And sometimes people would go along to Janet and Stuart, and they would go, well, maybe you should contact Barbara and her other half. And so, yeah, it was kind of through that it grew. And I think the other interesting thing about it is that over the years, I've had, I would say, 4 covens. Our first coven was born as the Coven of the Puck Goat. Now, you know what the Puck Goat is, but the Puck Goat is, we're not allowed to have a puck goat anymore anyway.
What was the idea behind making that? But like, was it you just didn't understand what you were getting into? Or
I think it was my ex really liked the puck goat,
Okay.
and he was taken by, you know, the whole fancy of that, and we needed a name.
Yeah.
So it ended up, and he had a photograph of the puck goat up on his platform.
right, so a little bit tongue in cheek.
Yeah, there was. It was definitely tongue in cheek. So we all got little cards with puck goat on it. So anyway, that was the first one, and that was the one we started off with the lads. And, you know, time passes, and, you know, some of them got married and moved away, and
This is the one that hived from.
this is the original coven that hived.
Stuart,
And then our coven moved into a second incarnation, I suppose, around the late 80s and early 90s. Like that would have been kind of the 80s. And the late 80s, early 90s, our coven went through a second incarnation. And it was very different, kind of completely different ethos. Same praxis, but different ethos. And I know that it's difficult to explain. I was that bit older. I was a mum. I was working with people who were that bit older. You know, I wasn't just working with my contemporaries. I was working with people who were a bit younger, people who were a bit older. So there was a bigger mix. And that particular incarnation, I suppose, lasted for about 5 years, maybe 6 years. And then it changed again. And that was when you came along. And that incarnation of the coven really grew out of the first sort of feelings of the internet going out there.
That, by the way, was called the Coven of the Dagda's Cauldron.
And that's when it took its name, was the Coven of the Dagda's Cauldron.
Which kind of, I didn't even connect that until much later. Like, I started working with as a Mórrígan priestess and all this, and it never kind of registered with me that, like, it had been right, that the Dagda had been right there, like, the whole time, you know.
Well, I mean, one of the reasons why we affiliated so strongly with the Dagda and the Dagda's Cauldron is because it's a symbol that holds masculine, feminine, everything that rests within it. It's a symbol of regeneration, but it's held by a male, and yet it's very female. And so it was actually that coming together of those two energies to create something that was unique in itself. It was hermaphroditic.
Yeah, and that's very much the Wiccan kind of ethos as well, is the balancing between masculine and feminine. And it used to be, I think back in the day, it used to be like male and female, very kind of sex based.
But now that again,
and even at that point, I didn't feel that it was definitely moving. Like when I joined, there were still remnants of, like, I do remember back in the early days of like kind of hanging on of like, you know, you can't have somebody who's gay who is like, you know, and there was a lot of shit that was very much of its time, but even at that point it was moving on.
It was very definitely moving on. And I think one of the interesting things about it is, and this is why I talk about evolution and learning and growth, generationally, particularly in Ireland, I come from the end of the homophobic, racist, and we wouldn't even get, I mean, I actually do remember meeting the first person I met who was transsexual. I didn't get it. I really didn't get it. I do. You know, it took me a while to get it, but I got it because I needed to understand it. And, you know, it's understanding what it's about, and understanding people, and understanding the polarity that exists within each of us, and how you can be born with the wrong bloody polarity, and that is so hugely important. But I also remember my confusion, because this was something new to me. This was something I had never experienced before.
It's very new in Ireland. Ireland, even in the last 5 years, is such a different place. You know, now I think that's the manifestation of a lot of changes that have been happening for the last 20 years. But
it's also quite frightening. I mean, I'm privileged to have amongst my friends, my good and close friends, quite a few transsexual people. I have other friends who have none, who don't even know what it would be like to have somebody.
Or if they do, they don't know about
it. Or if they do, they don't know. I totally agree with you, because I actually do know a couple who, yes, they do. Yeah. But you know, it's about trust, and it's about trusting with who you come out to and who you don't. Yeah. And I always feel it's a huge privilege, when somebody comes out to me and tells me, well, actually, I am, and I'm, wow. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for trusting me with that. Yeah. You know, that's massive. But you know, it's all about, as I say, it's about learning, it's about evolving, it's about understanding. And you know, understanding that we live in such a diverse world. You know, and the one thing that we can give to this world that will make it better is respect. Yeah. You know, absolutely. We don't have to love everybody, but we do have to respect.
A lot of people I don't love.
Oh yeah. I am with you there. But I will do my utmost to respect somebody until they actually just trash me to pieces. Yeah. You know, then,
well, there's boundaries. Yeah.
There's boundaries. Yes. But we have to keep our boundaries in place as well.
You have to keep yourself safe too.
But I will always open a relationship on a basis of respect.
And none of this stuff, like, you know, we're talking about evolving and we're talking about changing and everything. None of this stuff is actually new. Like, trans people
have been there forever.
Gay people, you know, non-binary people, all of these things have always been with us. Our society has moved from a point of recognizing that and accepting that to where we were. Yeah. So we're reverting. So the evolution is a societal evolution.
Absolutely.
You know.
But we have to be magically, I mean, particularly magically, particularly when you are working with polarities and understanding polarities. I mean, one of the things that I think needs to be made very clear is that when you're within a circle, you are creating a polarity with every single person within that circle.
Yeah.
In every single way, you are creating a polarity, because if you're not creating a polarity, you're not creating energy.
Yeah.
Like,
there has to be the flow.
there has to be something you have, to take the terms negative and positive in their scientific meaning. You have to have something that is going to feed in on both levels, because otherwise it ain't going to work. If I'm constantly giving and somebody is constantly taking, it's not going to work, because I'll be worn out. But if you're both creating this thing between you, this power, this energy, then it works.
It's the cycles on the microcosm, isn't it? It's like you started by talking about, like, being connected to the cycles, and that was one of the things that was kind of fascinating to you, and it like, that's the macrocosm of it. But our internal circle or community or group situation is that microcosm. Expression of that, or understanding of that.
Absolutely. And it's it's not something that is exclusively Wicca, but it is something that Wicca exclusively understands, that makes it what it is that understanding of what polarity is and how polarity works.
Very fundamental part of the system.
Yeah, absolutely. At its most extreme, it's midday and midnight. But there's twilight and there's dawn.
Many minutes in between.
Exactly. There is no such thing as a single source. It's got to be that whole thing feeding in, because if you don't have the whole thing feeding in, you're losing out on so much.
So when you started the Coven of the Dagda's Cauldron, then that ran for a number of years.
It did. I suppose the Dagdas ran. We were always had a coven, and so from the time we started in 1983, we continued until 2002. And in 2002, I got the wake-up call. I just realised I am so utterly miserable in my marriage, and we are actually only staying together because of the coven, not because of the children, because of the coven. So I decided, in my wisdom, and I really think it was my wisdom, I decided that no, I just couldn't do it anymore. And so I had a very difficult breakup with both the coven and my ex-husband.
I was out of it at that stage. I'd moved to Roscommon.
Yeah, you had gone. And
I got my 3rd degree and moved on.
There were still a few people left, and one of them took over the running of the coven with my ex-husband. But he kept telling them, well, one of the things that I said when I left, and this is very important, is when you have vested so much energy, so much magical energy into creating and sustaining a group, one of the things that has to happen when one of the leaders leaves that group is the group has to dynamically change. And what didn't happen was that group tried not to dynamically change. We have a word for it in Wicca, and the word is to void the coven. In other words, to close that coven and to start a new one. And they didn't do that. And of course, because it wasn't done, and it needed to be done because it was a magical entity, it collapsed into itself. Sinkhole, it became a sinkhole, and everybody just scattered in different directions. And I had retired. I was going to do my own thing, and I was going to work solitary, and everything in the world was going to be rosy, and I was never going to run a coven again.
Then in 2003, we started Witchfest.
In 2003, we started Witchfest, and
I was approached by a very dapper-looking young gentleman.
and I also ran classes because I've always kind of liked the teaching thing. So I ran a set of classes in Dublin and I ran a set of classes down in Wexford. And I had also met the love of my life. And just coincidentally happened to be very interested in Wicca and asked me to train him. Now, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, never train your magical partner.
Yes.
Right? never do it.
Yes.
But of course I did. And it was the right thing to do in that case.
I think you facilitated his training.
Yeah, well, well as that.
Knowing both people involved, I don't think you actually were in that, because the reason for, just to clarify, the reason for not doing that is because you are in a position of power and authority over somebody, which creates an imbalance in the relationship, which is very easy to lead to an abusive relationship.
Absolutely.
And that was not the situation.
No, I very wisely at the time took a lot of advice from other people. Yeah. I consulted people when, I had to make a decision regarding his training or whatever.
We all trained.
yeah. I mean, it was a question of not doing this, being very, very sensitive. But also, he's a hell of a strong person.
Yeah.
So that, he is not the kind of person who would allow himself to get into that kind of situation.
Okay, no, I'm just going to pause you there, because people who get into those abusive situations are often very, very strong people.
Yeah,
so, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, but because I was sensitive to it.
Yeah. I think maybe looping back to what you were saying earlier about you find your own path within Wicca.
Yeah.
And he was very much doing that. That's what I meant by facilitating his training rather than training him.
Yeah,
he was learning.
Certainly. and I mean, all the gods help him. He had to learn on the job too, because in the middle of all of this, I was asked to start another coven. And it was then, a year 2004, that Serpent Coven was born. And Serpent Coven actually is really interesting in terms of coven, that people have come into it and people have left. But it's retained much more a sense of its originality. I mean, the people who were there at the beginning are still somewhere there in its existence, whereas the other incarnations of my covens, that didn't happen. So I think that's really interesting. I also think, again, we're internet world. It's a much more mature coven. I'm older. I mean, we used to go and fall on the floor and do all sorts of things like that. We are now officially known as the coven that stands, because I do not do the floor anymore, because I can't get up from the floor if I do the floor. So it's it requires many strong men to lift me up, and we won't put them through that. So we are now officially the coven that stands. We are not the coven that falls to the floor and
lounges on cushions.
We feast on the sofa. What can I say? It's allowed, but also, as I say, it's slightly more mature, which I like. It's the advantage of having a mature coven is it's far less agenda driven. When we were young, when I was young, when you were young, we all had our own agenda that we wanted to pursue. Whereas now it's more about what we want to do. And we're actually going through a very relaxed stage at the moment where we're not training anybody, so it's even nicer. It's very nice. We'll get back to training, but just sometimes it's good just to take time out, and we're taking a bit of time out and just enjoying each other's company and celebrating Sabbats and doing interesting things with ritual, because we can. So
what does it look like now, the coven structure? So you've got your high priest and your high priestess, obviously, as the coven leaders. How does it work then around that?
Around that, at the moment, it's incredibly flat, because everybody's nicely trained on and everything else. Up until last year, we were running an outer court. and the outer court of the coven was run by our second degrees. And it was run exclusively by our second degrees. We didn't have any input into it because we felt that what we wanted to do was to give them somewhere where they could have free reign and learn on the go. We were always there. They could always come to us with any issues or any problems. But it was basically, they were training the neophytes and they were putting together whatever training program they wanted to do. And we would, quite happily allow them to make errors, because that's how you learn, and not make errors, and it worked really well.
And then did you come together for Sabbats?
We came together for Sabbats, and we came together for initiate rituals. So we would have time when it was just initiates only, which was very nice as well. And it allowed us again to expand what we were doing and to work at a different level. Because if you're always training, then you never feel like you've kind of moved beyond that stage. And you never really
need that space to grow yourself.
Yeah,
as well.
you never really get a chance to let go and grow into a magical persona, if you like. So that's been, our second degrees that were running the outer court would have been the Coven Maiden and the Summoner. Again, our structure has changed in that we don't really have we have about 3 Coven Maidens and our Summoner is female. Nice. Which is traditionally it's traditionally a male role, but
evolution.
Evolution. But also, why is it traditionally a male? Why does it have to be traditionally a male role? There's no real reason why it has to be a male role. Because somebody said it has to be a male role. I mean,
it's also outdated ideas of what men are and what women are.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is not relevant anymore.
So
gender roles.
Gender roles are not as important as they were in days gone past. Not in any. In the wider community, even down to simple things like consecrations and stuff like that, they're done in a very different way. And I think in a much healthier way. I think as we've kind of grown and developed, we've become emotionally much more healthy. We've become more balanced. I mean, Wicca is about balance. It's about the balance of polarity. So that balance of polarity expresses itself on, as I've said before, on so many levels that if you try and relegate it to male, female, you're losing so much.
Yeah.
It's
very narrow channels you're trying to fit everything into.
Absolutely.
Where do you go if you don't fit those channels?
There's nowhere to go. Yeah. And magically we have to be those kind of people. If you want to grow magically, you have to grow. That's actually, you can take a plant, you can put the seed in the ground, but if you don't feed it and you don't water it and you don't give it sunlight, it's not going to grow. And our emotional growth is very dependent on recognizing when it's going to rain and when the sun is going to shine, when it's going to be day, when it's going to be night. We talked briefly about the garden and what I do in the garden, and when I do it in the garden is just as important. I'm not going to prune my flowering shrubs when they're flowering. I'm going to prune them when they're finished flowering. And that will encourage new growth. And I think magically we actually have to do a bit of pruning ourselves.
Absolutely.
And the same with weeding, like take out the stuff that's choking the other stuff. Because if we get caught up in the minutiae of the irrelevant, we lose the big picture. And there are times it's like going for a walk. If you go for a walk and you look at the ground, you're never going to see the world around you. But when you go for a walk and you stop and you look up and you look at the trees and you look at the sky and you breathe the air around you and you feel the universe breathing and the world breathing through you. And you can do that on a city street. You can do it in a country lane. I prefer doing it in a country lane. I prefer doing it on top of the mountain, but mountain climbing these days not so good either. But I'll do a steep hill.
I can
I have yeah, I'm good friends.
How about Herc?
Oh,
The dog. He's a pug.
Herc
He still do hills.
Herc has never been able to do hills. I love him. He has to go for a walk around the field, and then I have to go for a walk.
Yeah.
So we actually have this incredibly complicated walking regime where I get up, I walk him, then I make breakfast, then I walk him, then I walk me, and then I get to work. So it's all, and then I have to walk him again before I go to bed. So I get lots of walks.
Yeah, but like there's also, talking about evolution and society and all the rest of it, I feel, and I'm pretty sure you do as well, that we also have a social responsibility as magical workers, as energy workers, as workers with the land, with the people, with the communities. We have a responsibility to shape that as much as, to be the change we want to see in the world.
Absolutely.
To who was that quote by?
I have no idea.
Excuse me, I can't remember, but it's definitely a quote that I've heard somewhere. But that is a responsibility that we have.
Absolutely. And I mean, there's lots of ways. There's lots of things that we can do. I mean, we do it in the pagan community by, running the moot and being mad enough to run festivals, which, both of us have had to stop doing before it killed us.
Go to paganliferights.org and you will find a list of moots in Ireland if you're interested. We are both founding members of Pagan Life Rights Ireland, and that is, we keep a current list. So a moot is a monthly meeting, which is like a social networking meeting. So it's an open point of contact. It's the ad in the In Dublin
newspaper. It's the ad in the In Dublin newspaper.
So we have a good scattering of them around the country, and there may, if you're in a different country, there may be different moots. I know that they're starting up. They are kind of a European thing, aren't they?
They are. They started off as, I think, very much an English thing, and kind of grew from there.
It's an Anglo-Saxon term.
Yeah, it's an Anglo-Saxon term, and there's loads all over the UK, and then Ireland has gradually, we've been growing and developing our little moot network, and there are some really good ones out there. But the Pagan Life Rights one are the best.
Of course they are. Of course they are.
We're just so cool.
So, and you can join as a member of Pagan Life Rights Ireland whether you're in Ireland or not. So you can get our newsletter and do all those wonderful things.
So there's that aspect of it, and I mean, we're coming up to our Yule Moot, and always at our Yule Moot we do collection for the homeless, because we have a big homelessness crisis in this country and we need to do something about it. And so that's that's caring for the wider community. But as well as that, caring about, I passionately care about the use of single-use plastics and the environment, and how I use the heating in my home to its most effective. The things that we do, I mean, even down to my energy supplier, I will not go with an energy supplier that does not have 100% renewable energy. It's, those kind of things are important. I have steel straws. I have the coolest soap with in a felt pocket that my auntie makes.
Nice.
And it's absolutely beautiful. And so I have no bottle of shower gel, and I have no plastic.
Yeah, I started switching over to Lush.
Lush shampoo bars.
But our closest one is, we've got Cork or Dublin. That's good. You can order online.
You can order online, exactly. So it's looking for alternatives to products. And the other thing that we're going to start doing now is, because I saw a thing about it, I didn't know where it did it in Ireland, and that's making eco bricks. The plastic bottles, and they're Cortown, the Seal Sanctuary in Cortown.
Okay, cool.
Is collecting them. So not that we actually use that many plastic bottles, but only with our gin and tonic. Because they don't do tonic in glass bottles. So it's the gin and tonic is my downfall, because I don't do soft drinks. And I don't do bottled water. We gave up bottled water years ago. We buy those nice, what's the name of that plastic? That is reusable. Is it EPA? I can't remember the name of it. But anyway, there's a particular type of plastic that you can reuse, and we buy bubbles, and they do 300 fills before you need to change the top. Brilliant. Not before you need to change the bottom, just before you need to change the top. So there's that much plastic to get rid of at the end of 300 uses instead of, you know, a landfill's worth. So yeah, things like that I am very, very passionate about, and will hopefully, I would like, if my son ever decides to reproduce, to have a legacy of a land, a world to leave to my grandchildren.
Close to the bone with that one, I think.
Yeah.
Time is ticking on it.
Time is definitely ticking, and it's an individual responsibility as opposed to, I mean, it is also a corporate responsibility.
Yeah. Very much so.
So it's I do things like send nasty little I send nasty little things to supermarkets, Facebook pages going, when are you going to ban black plastic?
No packaging, please.
Yeah.
Aldi are moving to packaging free.
Yeah. Slowly, but no, it's Lidl moving to packaging free.
Lidl,
yes.
is it? Okay. Great.
They're getting, but they won't be banning black plastic until 2021. So I don't know, but they're doing it. They're doing it for fruit and veg next year. All their fruit and veg will be packaging. Not all of it. They say all of it, but it won't be all of it. But some of it will be. And do you know what I discovered? I meant to tell you this. Sorry, just a moment here.
The gossip.
Vela Draoi cotton bags are the best bags to store potatoes in.
Fantastic.
Seriously, I
collector's items at this point.
I kid you not. I take mine to Lidl because they do lose potatoes, and I fill up my potatoes. None of them go off, and none of them grow eyes.
Brilliant.
So there you are.
Do I have any left?
I have loads up in my attic.
Okay, I'll grab some off you. Yeah.
So yeah, but seriously, that's the other thing we should stop using is cotton. So I'm just going to wear my clothes until they turn into rags, and then you know, maybe buy some more.
Yeah. Okay.
But our world's coming to an end.
Well, we are changing with it.
Hopefully, we are changing with it.
We really need to change.
We need to learn new habits, and we need to learn them fast.
Yeah. Reducing meat is another good way.
Yeah. Freezing stuff. Very good way of economising.
Yeah.
Bulk cook.
Meal planning. Yeah.
Meal planning.
There.
Yeah. And I mean, things like you use so much less of, you know, if you like your meat, which I do, I can get a pound of mince, and out of a pound of mince, I can make 16 meals.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So I can have my meat every day. But you know, it's not costing the earth.
It's 16 days rather than 1 day.
Absolutely, and that's the way we should be thinking. Is right. If you like your meat, have your meat every day. Just eat less of it. Put loads of veggies in, loads of other things, and you know, balance it all out. Yeah. But
and for anybody who came for the Wicca and is wondering why we're talking about eco stuff, it's because
we're
pagan.
It is also part of it. You know, we actually do care. It's not just. I mean, that's actually the thing that people need to get, is that Wicca is, the rituals are great. We love the rituals. But it's the life that's more important. It's how you live your life.
Absolutely. And that's paganism in general, but it's very much a part of the traditional Wiccan ethos.
Absolutely, and always has been. Yeah. I don't, you know, I actually can't think of a single person within my Wiccan acquaintanceship that does not take all of these issues extremely seriously. We create ritual around it. You know, I was again at something recently, and there was literally ritual all based on the ocean and the plastics going into the ocean and the seas around us, and how we can change. And we were giving lectures, and we were giving talks, and we were sharing ideas about what we can do to make it better for just in our little corner of the world. You know, we can't change everybody, but we can change ourselves. And if we change ourselves, we will slowly change the people around us. And if they change, then they will change, and it will grow. But if nobody starts to change, it will never grow. Yeah,
we have to do what we can. Okay, well, if you have enjoyed this video, do hit subscribe and share and like the video, engage with it, leave us a comment below. What did you think of it? Has it changed your ideas about Wicca? Or has it changed your ideas about Irish paganism in any way? Or has it changed your ideas about me or Barbara in any way? Who knows? Comment
all
below.
hate mail goes to Laura, right?
Yeah, trolls in the comments, all deleted. Just zero tolerance. Okay, so Gura Maga, thank you so much. And as ever, a joy to see you.
You.
Yeah, and I can't believe it's been so long and we're still such good friends.
Yes, and well, we'll always be good friends.
Yeah, it's the way it should be.
Absolutely. I don't hold with falling out with people. No. Not with people I love.
No, very much.
You know, and I mean, just on a final note, people you love are allowed to do things that you don't agree with. You know?
That's where the respect comes in.
Absolutely. Respect.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to turn this off. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.